Hi there, welcome back. I am Sydney Brown, and we are in chapter 4 of Memoir Mastery, a step-by-step guide to writing your life story. We're talking now about developing authentic characters. And yes, you are a character. So if you're ready, let's get started. Remember to like the videos, subscribe to the channel, and definitely comment below when you've subscribed or if you have any questions. I do come into the comments and I respond as often as I can. And I am anxious to hear your feedback. Be nice, and I will talk to you in the class. All right, we are heading into chapter 4 of Memoir Mastery, a step-by-step guide to writing your life story. We're going to start into developing authentic characters with section 1, writing about yourself as a character. And if you're ready, let's just dive right in. Now, first things first, writing about yourself as a character is the whole point of doing that is to make a three-dimensional portrait of yourself on the page. You want people to be able to read your memoir and understand who you are and what you stand for, what makes you unique, what makes you tick. Let them get to know you. And by doing that, you're showing them your character. So you're not becoming a character, you're showing them your character. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the number one way and method of writing about yourself as a character is to embrace vulnerability. Now, I know that for a lot of us, it's tough to even ask for help, to show your weakness. But in a memoir, it's literally intended to do just that. This is where you talk about when you're open, when you're honest, when you let the walls down. So embrace that vulnerability and don't be afraid to share your struggles, your fears, your failures along the way. It's those moments that your reader is actually going to feel most connected with you. You don't need to ham it up or be more than authentic, but don't be afraid to embrace your vulnerability and just be authentic, be real. Number 2, create a character arc. Now, just like in a novel or a movie, your character in the memoir should have a clear arc. And by arc, I mean a journey that leads you from where you were to where you become. And that has to be a clear journey, especially as you plan this out. You want to plan what you're going to talk about, what you're going to share. You need to know that clear arc so that you can really know where to go deep, where to stay, up at 10,000 and 30,000 feet. It's important to be clear on that and to know who you are as you go into that. Number 3, use descriptive language. And of course, we've talked about this. You want to make sure that you paint a vivid picture of yourself, of on this page, as someone's reading, they know who you are. So don't be afraid. And I don't mean, you weigh 146 pounds and you're this and your hair is long and stringy. You can share some of that if you want to, if it pertains to the story, but let them know you, what's inside you, and use that descriptive language, using the sensory details, the dialogue, the metaphors, the similes, all that stuff that we've talked about. Show versus tell. Number 4, develop your character traits. Now, just like in a novel, your character in a memoir should have very distinct character traits that make them unique. And by them, I mean you. So identify what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, your quirks. If you have a tick, if you bite your nails, whatever it is, don't be afraid to, at least on some level, talk about those things, because that lets the reader into your inner circle. They get to know who you are. Um, Number 5, use the internal dialogue. And we've talked about this. That internal dialogue will immediately help that reader know what you're thinking, because you're not lying, you're being honest, and you're actually letting them into your head. Now, only through internal monologue or dialogue can you let them know all of the thoughts. They could be, the gritty thoughts, the dirty thoughts, the things that you're ashamed of, the things that you're most proud of, the things that, when you're most hurt. It's letting them in on that will get them fully engaged into your story. And then, of course, number 6, yep, show don't tell. We've discussed it, and I will discuss it probably in every video. It's just so important that you use the right terms, the right verbiage, to make sure that your reader is in a sensory environment, that they feel what you're going through as you share your story. And number 7, use humor. Like we've mentioned, humor can be a powerful tool to breaking up tension, adding levity to your story. You want to use it to show your readers that you're not so full of yourself or your story, that you can laugh, that no matter what you're going through, you can step back and just laugh about something. It's important to not always be too serious. Uh, you don't want to necessarily have an out of character break, like you don't want to throw humor in the middle of punching someone, unless that's actually, the point. So don't be weird about it, but humor is a good thing. Now, number 8, use dialogue. And this is one of those things that to me is almost up there with number 1, because dialogue does so much. The two people, or more than two people, conversations, when you have that dialogue, you're able to let your reader into the conversation. It's like they're sitting there watching you have an argument with someone, or have a sensitive talk with someone, and you're just letting them sit there in the room with you like a fly on the wall. And you can move the story. You can actually move the story as you put the actions into your dialogue. So use of dialogue is a very, very strong technique. Number 9, conflict. Don't forget to put conflict in it. Now, one thing that I do want to make sure that you understand is conflict isn't always just fighting. I have a conflict with you, so I don't like you and I don't agree with you. That's not the only way you have conflict. Sometimes conflict is just simply, maybe you're on a weight loss journey for your health or something, and the conflict is trying to lose the weight and stay healthy or get healthy. The conflict isn't always with someone else. Sometimes it's an internal conflict. So don't be afraid to use conflict. And honestly, the more conflict you add, you probably want to make it a little bit, small conflict that gets bigger. And like on the hero's journey that we talked about, at some point you're going to bust through the wall, and you're going to come out the other end. Number 10, symbolism. Now, symbolism is a powerful tool in creating meaning and adding depth to your story. It represents ideas and emotions and themes, and it connects the reader on a deeper level. Number 11, I love this one because we've said it a lot of different ways, but it's show your flaws. Don't be afraid, like I said, biting your nails. You know, what if you're a habitual liar and you don't know why you lie, but you just do? And you know, someone could say that the sky is blue and you would tell them it's green. You know, don't be afraid if you have a flaw to be open and share that with your reader, because they're not judging you. They're connecting with you. Your readers know that you're sharing your story and that it's about authenticity and that you're being vulnerable. So they're not buying your story or reading your short story to hurt you or judge you. They want to get to know you. So let them. Um, Number 12, flashbacks. Again, flashbacks are a really great tool to use if you maybe left something out earlier, or maybe, you know, one of the times that I've used flashbacks in fiction is when somebody is moving out of a house and they're looking room to room and having memories of different things that happened in each room of their house as they're leaving. And in that, I was able to pull a memory of a previous spousal abuse, and that was something that, you know, really brought some character and you know, deeper understanding of the protagonist and what she was going through. So when you use flashbacks, you're able to really kind of pinpoint something that there's no other way to fit it into your current day story. And then number 13, be honest. You know, just remember that this is about your story. If you want to write fiction. But if you're writing a memoir, let it be honest, let it be authentic. Don't sugarcoat your bad things, and don't amplify, you know, anything good or bad. Just be real. Uh, the readers often will be able to feel that it's not authentic, and they may put the book down, or they'll totally fall in love with you. And then just remember, you know, writing about yourself as a character is all about creating a portrait of who you are, you know, and making this flat piece of paper a real person. And I know you can do this. Just get in there. It's going to take some emotion, some maybe some self therapy, and just make yourself the character that you really are. Be relatable. Go out there, have some fun, and let your creativity soar. Okay, so now we're moving on to describing other people in your life. Now, if you're ready, we're gonna talk about how do you work other people into your memoir, uh, describing them and building their character. If you're ready, we'll go ahead and get right in there. First things first, though, when writing about other people, it's important to be respectful, honest, and fair. Now, here's a few tips to help you describe other people in your life in your memoir. Now, understand you're going to hear a lot of this that we just said as well. So I'm going to go through this a little bit faster. It's just common sense to some degree, because a lot of this, the same way you describe yourself, you'll also describe other people. So show, don't tell. Number 2, use descriptive language. Number 3, and this is a big one, be respectful. Remember that the people in your life are real people, that they have their own feelings. You're in their life. This is your story, and you have the right to think of them as you choose. But if you're putting something into print, you want to be respectful. They may not have the same view of themselves as you do. But understand they have emotions and that they're living their own experiences as well. So be respectful of their privacy and their feelings, and avoid sharing things that could be hurtful or damaging. Number 4, be honest. Now, we're going to talk about this all the way through, but especially right now when we're talking about other people, I really want to make sure that you understand you're not going to want to sugarcoat their character either. You don't want to make them into, the perfect best friend or the perfect neighbor or the perfect anything to try to appeal to them, because this is your authentic, your honest memoir. And in that, you need to be honest about them as well. So if they have flaws, don't be afraid to share their flaws, but make sure that you're not hurtful as you phrase the words or describe it. Just be honest without being hurtful. Number 5, show their impact on your life. Now, this is really what matters, because if they're in your story, they should have some sort of an impact on your life. If they don't have a real impact on your life that involves the journey that you're making, then you may not need to have that person in this story. You can put it as a tertiary character, someone who, just kind of talk about them as a neighbor or just a friend or something without going deep. You can do that, but you wouldn't necessarily want to really talk about them very much unless they have an impact. Now, if they do have an impact in your life, share that, because that's really one of the main reasons that a lot of people write memoirs. Is some people have such a profound impact on their lives that they want to give that, hand the flowers to them and say, thank you for this, thank you for being the one who cared, thank you for being the one that had my back. And don't be afraid to really say, whether it's good or bad impact, don't be afraid to share that impact. Be very, very honest. Sometimes it's an influence that they had, and sometimes it's a very direct thing that they did in your life. Number 6, again, is use dialogue. Always use dialogue when you're having conversations, because again, your reader becomes a fly in the room, and that is the best way for a reader to fully engage. 7, use flashbacks. We've talked about that. When you can't automatically, bring the full degree of what happened in one little bit or something, you can turn it into a flashback. A flashback can be from an hour ago, or it can be from 50, 60 years ago. It's up to you. A flashback is a flashback. Use them sparingly though. And again, number 8, use humor, because humor, especially if you're in a sensitive topic or talking about someone else, sometimes humor is exactly what you need to break up some of the tension. Remember, this is always something that you really want to take care of when you're writing about other people in your life. It's about creating a portrait of that flat paper turning into a real person, but you do need to be respectful, honest, and fair. You know what I say, get out there, have fun, and let your creativity soar. All right, so now we're going to move into balancing honesty and compassion. Now, this can be a little bit of one of those touchy topics, so if you're ready to learn how to balance honesty and compassion in a personal memoir, then let's dive right in. So first things first, writing a personal memoir can be a delicate balancing act. On one hand, you've got where you want to be authentic and honest, and you want to tell all your truth about your experiences and your journey. But on the other hand, you don't want to hurt some of these people that you care about. You don't want to damage their reputations. So here's a few tips to help you find the right balance. Number 1, first and foremost, be honest. Honesty is the foundation of any good memoir. So don't sugarcoat your experiences. Don't try to make yourself look better than you are. Be honest about your struggles, your flaws, and your mistakes. Be honest as a whole. And usually that will be your best route to take. Number 2, use compassion. Now, you may think that, this is something that doesn't even need to be told. You would never deliberately hurt someone, but sometimes you could write your truth and it might put a shade on someone else. So make sure as you write, or at least as you edit, that you use that compassionate spirit and you remember that the people in your life are real people, that they have their own feelings, their own emotions and experiences. So use compassion to avoid showing them in a bad light. Avoid sharing anything that could be hurtful or damaging. Now, that doesn't mean you have to turn them into saints, but maybe just leave things out if it doesn't directly relate to your story. Number 3, show empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand the feelings of another person and to actually feel for them because of it. So use your empathy to show your readers that you understand that people in your life, they may have had an impact on it, but that was your journey, that was their journey. So what you could do in a case like that is, if say someone abused you, you could say they were in a dark place in their life, they made mistakes. You could tell the truth and not paint them as the forever villain. So show empathy and understanding. Number 4, be respectful. Now, just remember to be respectful of everybody in every part of your life, but anything that you put into print, you definitely want to be respectful of the people in your life and their privacy. So avoid sharing things that could be hurtful or damaging, and always ask their permission, especially, if it's something that could be misinterpreted in their mind or in anybody else's. It's always better to ask permission in advance of finishing a memoir. Now, obviously, there have been memoirs where they're tell-all kind of memoirs, and those get juicy, but understand those probably also come with lawsuits. So be careful about that. Be respectful. And then, of course, just use discretion when sharing any personal details about the other people in your life. Ask yourself, is this necessary that I talk about this? If somebody had an eating disorder, did that eating disorder impact me and my story? If it didn't, there's no reason to put that in there about the other person. You just don't need to tell that. Let them tell that in their memoir if they choose to, but that's not your story to tell. Use sensitivity. Number 6, be sensitive and show people in your life in a more positive light. Highlight their strengths and their positive qualities. Avoid dwelling on their flaws and the negative qualities. Now, if they had directly impacted you in a negative way, you need to be honest about that. You need to show that they hurt you in some way, but you can always find a way to, again, not paint them as the forever villain. They may have done something wrong. They may have made a bad mistake. They may have had a lapse of judgment. You're not there to judge them. You're there to talk about your story and how they impacted your story directly. Again, just be cautious and be sensitive. And number 7, we've talked about this before. Obviously, use humor when you can. If it's not a deep topic, maybe someone's a chain smoker and, maybe you want to make a joke about it instead of judging them as being a chain smoker. Use things like that. Because humor can sometimes, your person, if they're a chain smoker, they'll laugh about that instead of feeling attacked. So humor when you can. Just remember, balancing honesty and compassion is all about finding the right balance between the authenticity and empathy. It can be tough. It can be tough to find that balance. and you may have to manuscript the full truth as you see it today. And then as you start editing through, remember we talk about how you edit brutally, you know, just cut out the things that don't need to be there. And with that, you will find your balance. It's not that tough, but it can feel a little bit intimidating. Uh, we do have a Facebook group. If you ever come in and you have a question, feel free to come in and ask things. You know, can I say this? And of course, I'm not a law, I'm not an attorney, and I don't pretend to be. If you have a question, we can tell you what we believe and what we think. But just find the balance. But most importantly, as I say, go out there, have some fun, let your creativity soar. Okay, now we're going to talk about the top 10 tips for creating memorable characters. Now, I know I just said, don't tell everybody's dirt. Don't do this. Don't do that. Find your balance. Be empathetic. But now I'm going to tell you, you have to make them creative. You gotta make them memorable. You gotta make them unique. So how do you do that while being empathetic and careful and not telling all their secrets? There's a balance here, but if you're ready to dive into that, let's just get started. So 1, give them unique traits. Memorable characters often have unique traits or quirks that make them stand out from the crowd. Think about the people in your life. What are the things that make them unique, and try to incorporate those traits into your character. Now, it doesn't have to be a bad trait. It can be anything. Maybe you have 3 friends, and let's see, Mary, Sarah, and I'm gonna forget their names. Mary and Sarah. Let's have 2 friends. But you have Mary and Sarah, and Mary loves to sing, and she dances around, and she's always happy. That's Mary. And then Sarah, maybe Sarah is always so stressed. Maybe she's a single mom and she's always stressed, always working. She's got 3 jobs. And you can tell these things because they're true. They're not hurtful. They're not harmful. But if you tell those things, your reader instantly knows Mary is a happy person. She's probably pretty stress-free. She's always singing and dancing around. And poor Sarah, she's always stressed. And so if at some point, Sarah snaps at you, maybe the reason she did was because, and you can show your empathy then, is because she's so stressed in her own journey. And those are the ways. But you have to be able to tell, what's the difference between Mary and Sarah? You have 2 different friends that you may talk about in your memoir. You want to make sure that your reader can tell who they are, and then they'll bond with that person by their traits. So give them unique traits, and you don't have to tell all their stories, but enough to let your readers know just enough about them to see how they're going to impact you in your journey. Next, make them relatable. Just like your character traits need to be relatable, and that flat page of words have to come alive into a dimensional character, you need to make them relatable, because your reader will, if Mary is dancing around, a reader who is also, always humming or something, she may relate more with Mary than with Sarah. But if she's also a single mom, she may relate better with Sarah. So it's just like one of those things. If they're different people, find what's different about them and point out that thing. It doesn't have to be a negative thing, just a thing, and make them relatable, something that your reader could probably associate with. Next, create strong motivations. Now, this is really important for your journey, for anything that you talk about with other people. just across the board in writing. Your characters need to have strong motivations because something needs to drive them. If something's going to get hard and then harder and tougher until they almost give up, they have to be willing to push through and get to that finish line. So you have to give them a strong motivation. It might be, a desire for revenge or love, for power, whatever it is. Make sure your characters have clear motivations, and they might have a storyline that's going a different way than yours and you intersect at some point. That's perfectly fine, and actually that will happen quite a bit. So tell enough about their storyline and you can kind of put their storyline to bed before you move on with yours. But make sure that there are strong motivations, because when you give them the conflicts, which is our next thing, uh, they have to have the motivation to keep going when it gets tough, because it's going to get tough. And if it doesn't get tough, do you really need to tell the story? There needs to be a story there. So number 4, give them conflicts. The conflict is, like I said before, it's not necessarily a fight between two people. It is anything that is an obstacle. It's something that you or their characters need to get through before they can get to the next phase of their life, of their story, of their journey. Make them dynamic. Now, by that, I mean, if you have a friend named Bill, and Bill is a 40-year-old husband who works in an ad agency, and he drives a Volvo, and he's this and he's that, you've got Bill right here. And Bill is always Bill, but what happens if, 10 years down your story, if Bill is still in the same story, surely Bill changed in the last 10 years, right? So you have to make them dynamic. So as your life changes, so does theirs. Dynamic is just absolutely must if you're going to be believable. You can even highlight very quickly, the next time I saw Bill, he was in a Maserati. I don't even know if they still make those, but he was wearing Italian suits and leather boots or whatever. Show that somehow over the course of the time that Bill changed. So let them be dynamic. Let them grow in their lives and their journeys as they interact and intersect with yours. The next thing, use descriptive language. Now, we've talked about this before, but it's so important to be descriptive. Use all the 5 senses as you describe. Use the sensory, the dialogue, the metaphors. Show your readers that these characters are real people. Let them be real. Next thing, show their flaws. And again, this is one of those things where we're balancing, you need to be able to show the characters' flaws. So the other people in your life, show their flaws, and they need to be relatable. They need to be human. You can't make them all into these saints that, that just catapulted you up to your stardom or whatever. They have to have had their own struggles. Otherwise, they just aren't going to be believable. It's going to be like, just a fairy tale, happily ever after book. And that's not real. And again, if that's the real story, then is there a story? Again, use humor. Sometimes it's a way to break things up and to take, the tension out of it. And sometimes it's just good to laugh. Humor for the sake of humor is wonderful as well. Next topic, give them backstories. It doesn't have to be, they don't need to know everything about Bill or Mary or Sarah. They need to know more about you, but at least we need to give them some backstories. So, in just that brief little bit of time, we know that Sarah is a single mom and she's working 3 jobs, and Mary likes to sing and dance. But what's Mary's backstory? Maybe she's married, maybe she's a housewife, maybe she's having an affair with Bill. I mean, we don't know. But whatever the backstory, now you may not want to put that in there, because if that's not public knowledge, then you definitely don't want to be a tell-all. Or you might, but I'm not recommending that. But do give backstories to your characters, because your reader wants to know, not just you, but they want to know them. They want to know and make up their own mind. Is Bill a jerk? Is Bill the bad guy? Or is Mary the bad guy? She's so happy. She's always singing and dancing. There's something wrong with Mary. Why is she's the bad guy, isn't she? And your reader is going to want to go on that journey with you. So as you do this, the final thing is just make them unique. We've talked about that a little bit. You have to keep something about them that makes them worth making it into your story, into your memoir, into your journey. So find something that makes them unique, makes them stand out from all of the other characters, and give them a distinct personality, the voices, the things, the way that they talk, different things like that. So creating characters is all about giving the unique traits, making them relatable, giving them strong motivations, and making sure that there's conflict in there somewhere so that it's interesting enough to keep reading. Once you do that, you're gonna be well on your way to a great memoir. So, as I say, get out there, have fun, and let your creativity soar.